Okay, picture this. December 1994, Mexico. A brilliant, really quite famous scientist just vanishes.
Completely disappears. And he leaves behind these incredibly mind-bending theories and a mystery that, well, people are still trying to figure out today.
Exactly. We're diving into the world of Dr. Jacobo Grinberg. He was a neurophysiologist, a psychologist, an author. Some people even called him the Einstein of consciousness. Big claim.
It really is. And, our mission here in this deep dive is to try and get a handle on who Jacobo Grinberg actually was, what was his big idea, this synergistic theory.
Right, and his research, which got pretty controversial.
Oh, definitely. And of course, the baffling circumstances around his disappearance. So we've been looking through various sources, articles, info from documentaries to try and piece together this really unique story.
So let's start at the beginning. Who was this Einstein of consciousness? Give us the background.
Okay, so he was born in Mexico City, 1946. And it seems like a really profound personal event kind of set him on his path.
Who was that?
His mother died from a brain tumor when he was only 12. And that seems to have really fueled his lifelong interest in the brain, in consciousness.
Wow. Yeah, you can see how that would. But he pursued it academically, right?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Got a psychology degree from UNAM, then a PhD, get this in psychophysiology from the Brain Research Institute in New York.
Okay.
And his PhD work, interestingly, was already looking at how, geometric shapes affect the brain's electrical activity. Kind of a hint of where he was going later, thinking about perception and reality.
So he wasn't just staying in the ivory tower. He came back to Mexico.
He did. He set up a psychophysiology lab at Universidad Anahuac. And then later, this is key, in 1987, he founded INPEC, the National Institute for the Study of Consciousness.
INPEC.
Yeah.
Okay, and that became the base for his more unconventional work.
Exactly. That's where things really took off in a different direction.
Yeah.
Because his interests were just so broad. I mean, yes, neuroscience, but he was also deeply into shamanism, Eastern philosophy, meditation, telepathy, even astrology.
Astrology, too.
Yeah. He wrote over 50 books trying to bridge these worlds with science, trying to find the connections.
That paints a picture of someone just incredibly driven, hungry for knowledge, but maybe someone who didn't mind pushing boundaries.
Definitely. Sources describe him as ambitious, hardworking, charismatic people were drawn to him, but maybe also a bit headstrong, perhaps distrustful at times.
That complex guy.
A very complex and, it seems, intensely focused individual. And you kind of need to understand that complexity, I think, to grasp his work and, the whole mystery of what happened to him.
Was he a visionary seeing something deeper, or maybe someone who just went too far off the scientific map?
Or a bit of both. Pioneers often walk that line.
Okay, so let's tackle the big idea, his Syntergistic Theory. Sounds pretty heavy. What's the core concept? How did he see reality?
Right, the Syntergistic Theory. Basically, the core idea is that the reality you and I experience, it's not some fixed objective thing just out there.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's something that emerges. It comes about from the interaction between our own consciousness and this universal field of energy and information. He had a famous name for it.
The Matrix.
The Matrix, yeah. Not the movie, obviously. This was way before that. But the idea is that reality itself is created in that interaction. Consciousness isn't separate from the universe. It's fundamentally involved in shaping what we perceive.
So it challenges the whole idea of an objective world that exists whether we're looking or not?
Pretty much. He saw the universe less like a collection of separate things and more like this huge interconnected network. Think of it like a vast web of vibrations and information, kind of cosmic internet or database.
A cosmic database. I like that. And the brain's role in this, it's not just taking pictures then.
No, definitely not. Just a passive camera.
Yeah.
In his view, the brain is an active decoder. It's constantly interpreting this information field. And in a way, it co-creates your individual reality.
So my reality and your reality might be slightly different interpretations of the same underlying field.
Exactly. He believed we each perceive only a tiny fraction of this whole field. What you experience as the world is your unique interpretation, filtered through your consciousness, your biology, your experiences.
Like tuning a radio to a specific station within this huge spectrum of information.
That's a great analogy.
Huh?
And crucially, he thought this wasn't just a one-way street. He believed consciousness could actively interact with this field, this matrix, even potentially influence it.
Okay, influence it. Now, that opens up some really, some pretty wild possibilities, doesn't it? Especially when you think about things usually called paranormal.
Right, because if consciousness can directly interact with this fundamental information field.
Then things like telepathy or clairvoyance, they wouldn't be supernatural.
Non-Grinberg's view, they'd be, well, natural consequences. Telepathy would be like a direct transfer of information within the field, bypassing the usual senses. Clairvoyance would be accessing information from the field that isn't available through normal sight or hearing.
So he saw these as just untapped human potentials, abilities that are possible within the natural laws of this matrix.
Precisely. He was suggesting we might have capabilities far beyond what conventional science usually admits, that understanding our connection to this field could, unlock these things.
Which leads us directly into his research, which, as you said, got pretty controversial. He started working with Mexican shamans, healers. You mentioned Pachita.
Yes, Pachita.
Yeah.
Barbara Guerrero is her real name. She's a famous healer, a curandera, known for performing what people described as, well, miraculous surgeries with her bare hands.
Like what?
Reports of her materializing organs, healing supposedly incurable diseases. Really extraordinary claims. Grinberg spent a lot of time with her observing, documenting.
And he saw this as proof of his theory.
He saw her abilities as powerful evidence. He believed she was demonstrating a conscious interaction with the matrix, actually modifying physical reality through her intention, her mind. He wrote about it extensively in his book, Shamans of Mexico.
Quite a leap from the lab observing that. But he also did lab work, right? These telepathy experiments.
He did. The transfer of potential experiments. Very interesting setup.
How do they work?
Usually you'd have two people in separate rooms, often inside Faraday cages.
Okay, Faraday cages block electromagnetic signals.
Exactly. That was crucial to rule out normal physical transmission. So one person, the sender, would be exposed to a stimulus, maybe a flash of light or some kind of sensory input.
And the other person, the receiver.
Their brain activity would be monitored with an EEG.
Mm-hmm.
And Grinberg reported that when the sender experienced the stimulus, the receiver's EEG showed similar patterns of brain activity.
Even though they couldn't see the light or feel anything.
Correct. No sensory input.
Yeah.
He interpreted this as evidence of a direct connection, like consciousness to consciousness, happening via this underlying field, the matrix.
Wow. And then there were these experiments with children you mentioned, exploring perception of other dimensions. That part sounds a bit murky.
Yeah, the details on the work with children are much harder to come by. It seems to have been kept very quiet. And that lack of transparency, well, it naturally leads to questions and speculation. Ethical questions, too, of course.
Right. It all adds to this complex picture. Which brings us, inevitably, to the central puzzle, his disappearance.
December 8th, 1994. Just before his 48th birthday, he vanished.
But people didn't realize immediately, did they?
No, apparently not. Because he was known for just taking off sometimes. Spontaneous trips, periods of silence. It wasn't totally out of character initially.
But then time passed.
His birthday came and went. Still no word. People started getting worried. His lab at INPEC was empty, work unfinished. It became clear nobody had actually seen him since that day in early December.
And then it got even weirder, didn't it, with his wife?
His second wife, Teresa Mendoza, she was reportedly the last person to have seen him. And then she disappeared too.
Okay, that definitely changes things. What about the official investigation?
It was led by a Comandante Clemente Padilla. Sources say it started out pretty intensely, seemed like they were really looking into it. But then, it just seemed to slow down.
Slow down how?
Well, the case was eventually closed. And there were rumors, pretty strong rumors, of high-level interference. Maybe even connected to the president at the time, Ernesto Zedillo.
Interference? Why? That just fuels the speculation, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and the theories about what happened are all over the place.
Okay, let's run through them. What are the main ones?
Well, one persistent theory is abduction. That maybe some powerful group, the CIA, Mossad, someone, felt his knowledge about consciousness was either too valuable or too dangerous to be out there.
Plausible, given the potential implications of his work.
Some think so. Then there's the idea he was afraid, maybe in danger. There were reports he'd been sleeping in his van sometimes before he disappeared.
What about less exotic theories?
More personal reasons, sure. Maybe escaping debts or just a complicated personal life, wanting a fresh start somewhere else.
And then there are the theories that tie directly into his own work.
Exactly. The really Grinberg-esque ones. Some people genuinely speculate that he figured out how to use his Syntergic Theory, that he intentionally transitioned, shifted his consciousness into another dimension, into the matrix itself.
Became part of his own experiment, in a way.
You could say that, a real-life application of his most profound ideas. And then, of course, there are the theories that he's still alive, living under a different name.
Like Shiva Shambho. I've heard that name mentioned.
That's one name that pops up, yeah. But, concrete evidence for him being alive under an alias, it's just not there. It remains speculation.
It's just such a compelling, unsettling mystery. And it hasn't gone away, has it? People are still talking about him.
Oh, absolutely. There are documentaries like The Secret of Dr. Grinberg, books, online forums. His story continues to fascinate.
His legacy seems so divided. Genius visionary on one side, maybe a pseudoscientist on the other.
It's definitely complex. Some see him as way ahead of his time, asking fundamental questions about consciousness and reality that science is only now starting to grapple with, maybe in different ways. Others think he blurred the lines too much, that his methods weren't rigorous enough.
But you can't deny he made people think, right? His Syntergic Theory, whether you buy it or not, it's a radical way to look at the world.
It absolutely is. It's thought-provoking.
Yeah.
And for people looking into, human potential, the connection between science and maybe something more, spirituality perhaps, his work, even with the questions around it, is still really inspiring to many.
And the disappearance itself, it's become almost like a modern legend. It just adds to the whole enigma of the man and his ideas.
It really does. Did his research lead to it? Did he choose to leave? Was it something completely mundane that we just don't know about? It adds this whole other layer.
So after all this digging, the truth about what happened to Jacobo Grinberg, it seems it's still completely unknown, lost in the static.
It really is.
Yeah.
But, regardless of how or why he vanished, he left behind this incredible body of work that just fundamentally challenges how we think about reality, about consciousness, about what it means to be human.
It certainly does. And I guess exploring Grinberg's life and his ideas, it kind of leaves you with a big question, doesn't it?
Definitely. It makes you wonder, what if reality is more fluid, more interconnected, more participatory than we usually assume?
And if it is?
Well, what does that mean for us? What untapped potentials might be lying dormant within our own consciousness, just waiting for us to, tune into the right frequency? It's definitely something to think about.